For our 49th moment celebrating OU women's athletics, we are joined with two great people of Auto University, Jan Lee and Corkie Hedlund. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you much.
So the first question I'm going to ask you both is, how has Title IX affected Auto University?
Jan actually has the best history on that. I can talk from 1981. Why don't you tell us about stuff before that time?
Well, we started having women's sports not until 1975, and as I recall, volleyball and basketball were the only two sports that we had. We did hire a woman coach for volleyball, but as I recall, we only had a male coach who was one of the assistant coaches for basketball and football as our basketball coach.
Okay, awesome.
And that was pretty much what was happening when I got here. I think there was only basketball and volleyball for women when I got here. One of the reasons I think I was hired was because I had said during the interview that I would not make the players dive on the floor and crack their chins open. So that wasn't my style of coaching. But I was Bocek's assistant women's basketball coach for 1 year, and I don't think he needed or wanted an assistant, so that fortunately I had a huge job description, and I didn't mind losing that one at all. And then each year or so, we wound up playing more games and getting a little bit more support from the college. And we didn't know enough about what the men were getting to even ask for some of the stuff that the women were getting. And I pretty much was one of those people that wasn't going to run my own outside fundraising, because I thought if we needed something, it was up to the people who wanted us to play to pay for it. So I wasn't too popular in some of those kinds of things. As things developed, I was very pleased that we were in the Heart of America Conference when I started here, because the women in the Heart of America Conference fit my philosophy a whole lot more. To me, national championships happen as a result of doing the things that you philosophically believe should be part of a program, not practicing 14 hours a day and doing all the stuff that kept kids from being able to be a part of other activities. And the people involved in the Heart of America for the women at that time really seemed to be along that line, that if we get to a national championship, that's great, but we're not going to push to get there. The men in the Heart of America were just the opposite. They were competitive to the limit, and to be able to compete in the Heart of America, our men's teams had to go to the scholarships and everything else that would allow them to be competitive. So the year after I got here, we switched to the KCAC, and it was really an interesting flip, because the women in the KCAC were what the men were in the Heart of America in terms of their level of competitiveness, and everybody was trying to get to a national tournament and a national championship. So at least those things were available. One of the things that wasn't quite as pleasant about what was happening in women's sports was that the women were, a lot of the young women who had been college athletes and wanted more for the athletes didn't think about anything other than being able to be the highly competitive, and therefore pushed very hard to get to be like the men's programs. And they succeeded, and many of us who thought sports should be fun as well as competitive. Eased our way out, I would say.
That's awesome. And now, the second question is, how has female sports evolved at Otto University?
Well, they started with both basketball and volleyball.
Mm-hmm.
And as the years went by, we added more sports. Of course, just the ones that the men had. And I don't remember when we added what, but I think probably track and field and
Cross country.
cross country were among some of the other ones to be added. Then we, as I recall, we already had a baseball team and had for a while, but
we had it and didn't have it. There was baseball when I got here, and then we didn't have it for a while. And then we got baseball again and probably softball.
And I think that's probably when softball started.
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome.
One of the other things that, besides the proliferation of programs, the scholarshiping, things like that, began to be a lot similar to what the men, and then pretty much became the same thing. And some of those kinds of things. And Jan has seen actually more of it developing than I was pretty much into the sports that I was involved in, and she's paid attention forever to the whole athletic program at OU, and is super #1 OU sport supporter that I know of.
Well, I think that Title IX probably affected other than women's athletics. Because when I was in school, our physical activity courses, or what we called PE then, were all separated by sex. And when we went into a total new program of education in the 1970s, then physical activities changed and became co-ed. And so Title IX really affected part of the educational part of our.
Title IX required that anything that wasn't dangerous for the two genders to be together, that they had to be together. And many physical educators, even at the national level, were totally opposed to that and fought it hook, line, and sinker. So it's kind of interesting to find that OU addressed it even before I got here in 1981, because high schools were still fighting it at that point. They were calling everything contact sports. So if it was a contact sport, it didn't have to be co-ed. So yeah, that was very interesting in the PE realm. But I think my view as a physical educator is that opening up the PE classes to being co-ed created a greater understanding between men and women of the value spaces, because you can't hide yourself in a sporting situation.
Mm-hmm.
When you're playing that sport, you show yourself to be who you really are. And I think it's been good for men and women to be involved in that way.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us and being great role models at Otto University.
Thank you.